Kyle Larson's headed back to the Chili Bowl. George Russell and Max Verstappen genuinely seem like they hate each other. Plus, I want to talk about Indy 500 ticket prices real quick. Welcome back to Break Hard. I'm Matt. A little bit of housekeeping before we get into today's topic. So Break Hard was previously part of the Daily Downforce crew over there, the content creators that are all motorsports based. Wonderful people, have nothing but nice things to say about all of them. Worked with them for about the last year or so, but Break Hard has gone back to being independent, not being associated with anybody, just myself. It's just me, once again, just doing all the Break Hard stuff going forward, which is absolutely phenomenal. That's kind of how I like to do things in general. I'm typically the person that wants to go off and kind of just do things on my own over here. Again, nothing but good things to say about all of them over there. Just felt like it was time for a little bit of a change and to truly be independent going forward. Unless, of course, like Barstool or somebody wants to reach out, then we can have a conversation about that. But for now, Break Hard, once again, just Break Hard going forward. So let's get into the topics for the day. We'll start off with Kyle Larson, the two-time Chili Bowl Nationals winner in 2020 and 2021, has officially submitted his entry for 2025, meaning that he will be back at the Tulsa Expo Center in January, from January 12th to January 18th, to try to win his third Golden Driller. Tried to stop Logan Seavey from three-peating, and he and Paul Silva are taking that 1K midget, and they are going to see what they can get done. Larson, of course, made a surprise entry into the Chili Bowl last year when he called up Keith Coons and was like, hey, do you have an extra car for me to come run? Wasn't on the entry list. Late entry, goes down, runs, ends up on his roof, and didn't really work out how he intended it to at all. Ended up going back to Vado to run the dirt late model and not have to worry about getting back to Tulsa on Saturday night for the feature event. Larson now, though, has a pretty packed out schedule at the second half of December into the beginning of January. He, of course, is headed with the High Limit Series down to the Perth Motorplex. That's in Australia, really far away from here, for a 3-day event from December 28th to December 30th. And now also his name's on the entry list for the Tulsa Shootout, meaning that he's going to have to get on a flight from Perth, probably go to Dallas, then head to Tulsa from there. Good news, getting to Dallas, there's only one layover, either in Melbourne or Sydney, and then he can fly to Dallas and then take a flight from Dallas to Tulsa. No directs from Australia to Tulsa. Just as shocked as you all were about that as well. And then apparently run Tulsa Shootout as well. His name is on the entry list there. Move-in day for the shootout is December 30th. They are racing from December 31st until January 4th. For that race, that is also in the Tulsa Expo Center as well. And then he'll apparently be back in Tulsa from January 12th to the 18th. Obviously, whatever night is his qualifying night is likely the day he's probably going to show up. But for Larson, heavy travel for him internationally in the latter half of this year, starting into next year. And listen, the guy just doesn't really ever seem like he needs to sleep. He continues to, go full bore. He's got 3 kids. I don't think sleep is anything that he's too worried about, and I don't think he's going to care about the time adjustment and jet lag or anything like that. But it is cool to see Kyle Larson come back to Chili Bowl. It's been, 2 years really since he's had a true run at it. Obviously, he was in good equipment last year, just never really got the feel for it. Bringing, Paul with him, their own midget, a car that he's comfortable in, has laps in, just, ran at the Turkey Night Grand Prix, last week. I think that he's going to be in a much better spot to potentially win that third Golden Driller, which would put him up there, right? He's got 2 right now. A lot of people have 2. Bell has 3. I know he probably wants to tie Christopher Bell, if not beat him, with the total number of Golden Drillers. So for Larson, him coming back to the event is really good for the event, right? It needs big names like that to draw in the more casual fan, the people outside of dirt racing, for sure. And Kyle Larson is certainly a draw. He's NASCAR's most popular driver after all, right? I'm sure the comments won't absolutely try to correct me on that every single time I say it. Just fishing in a barrel. Just flick the cast out there. It hits the water, and I reel one time, hit, and you gotta just reel him back in. So Larson headed down to Chili Bowl. Turns out George Russell and Max Verstappen just legitimately hate each other. Following their fallout last week in Qatar, where Max was given a 1-spot grid penalty for his infringements in qualifying, the two of them just certainly do not see eye to eye whatsoever. Max calls George two-faced, says that he acts one way in public and one way behind closed doors, and then George just goes full scorched earth in his Thursday media availability and just went at Max left and right. He also went on to say that last week in Qatar, Max told him that he would go out of of his way to crash him and put him on his effing head into the wall, which is a pretty dramatic thing to say, but also doesn't seem that outlandish coming from Max, who at times, as we've seen in the past, has these tendencies to lash out with violence, lash out with words when things don't go the way that he thinks they should. And this is probably another perfect example of that. George said last week when he went to the steward's room, before he could even say anything, Max was already in there swearing at the stewards because of what had happened. And granted, there's a certain way you probably need to approach the stewards. I don't think going in and screaming at them and swearing at them is probably the best way, but who am I to say? George also then calls into question, I think, Max's maturity in a sense and how he sort of handles things and how he handles adversity when he says, quote, like I said to you before, he cannot deal with adversity. He's had the most dominant car in recent history for 2.5 years. I'm not questioning his driving abilities one single bit, but the second he does not have the fastest car, let's take Budapest as an example. He crashes into Lewis, he slams his whole team, he loses the plot. Straight away after that race, 25% of his engineering team are sending their CVs to Mercedes, McLaren, Aston Martin because they said they can't deal with this guy. And since Austria, he's won the same number of races as 6 other drivers. So yeah, he really doesn't seem to deal well with adversity. And George is right. When he doesn't have the fastest car, he lashes out. He says things. He starts driving aggressively. He starts driving over his head, and he's pretty dangerous on track. And we've seen that happen before. George also goes on to mention that the same thing has happened in 2021 and multiple races there. The run-ins that he had with Lewis. You can go back to Mexico earlier this year when he had that outburst when he attempted to wreck Lando Norris, not once but twice in the same lap, and got 2 penalties for it, contrary to what Christian Horner says. So George isn't wrong in what he's saying here. Max does have a history of lashing out, of not being mature and not being able to have a level head in a lot of situations where things aren't always going his way. George then goes on to say, quote, I think he's been enabled because nobody stood up to him. Lewis stood up to him in 21 and Lewis lost that championship unfairly. Could you imagine the roles being reversed and Max losing that championship in the manner that Lewis lost that championship? I mean, Massey would have been fearing for his life. Massey being that of Michael Massey, who was the race director back then when he allowed them to restart that race in Abu Dhabi in 21 with 1 lap to go and breaking all the procedures that they had in place. And that race never should have been restarted, but that's a topic for a different day. So George isn't wrong in anything that he's saying here. Max, of course, just flippantly brushes it off because he's been enabled his whole life. As George has said, nobody in that camp rather has told Max, hey, listen, you got to chill out. You can't just be this little diva all the time as much as he just kind of wants to be by the sounds of it. We also got a great Toto Wolff versus Christian Horner clip out of this as well, where Toto said, quote, yapping little terrier, he always has something to say. That in regards to Christian Horner, which is a spot on description of Christian Horner. Let's be completely honest. He is a yapping little terrier. He's not a very tall guy. He does look a bit like a terrier, and he always has something to say, generally not the right thing to say as well. So for Red Bull, yeah, they're going into this weekend. They got to deal with the George and Max stuff. They have to deal with the Sergio stuff, who says that he still is going to race in 2025 because he has a contract. Yeah, we need to tell Sergio that contracts literally do not matter. Daniel Ricciardo had a contract. Esteban Ocon had a contract. Guess what? They're both not racing in Abu Dhabi this weekend. Corey LaJoie had a contract to race at Spire in 2025 with Rodney Childers as crew chief. Guess what he's doing? Not racing at Spire in 2025. Contracts do not matter in motorsports. They can be bought out at any time. And if they don't want you in that race car, you're not going to be in that race car. Sorry, that's just how it is. Oh, well, he's too marketable. They're not going to get rid of him. Yes, they are. They are going to get rid of him. He is a liability to them in the Constructors' Championship. They will not sacrifice another year of mediocrity out of Sergio Perez just so that they can say, oh, well, Red Bull's popular in Mexico. They don't care. They're here to win. That's what they want to do. Win races, win championships. And Sergio does neither of them for them anymore. All right, the last thing I want to talk about real quick are Indy 500 prices. Now, let me preface this by saying the Indianapolis 500 is the greatest race in the entire world. It's the greatest spectacle in racing. I will continue to go every single year. I'll pay the price. Does not matter to me. I want to be there. I want to be a part of this entire experience. But I have to say, when I logged in to buy my tickets for the 2025 edition of this race, I was slightly surprised at the price of the ticket brain broke there for a second, that I saw when I logged in. So for the sake of transparency, typically our group sits in H stand. Coming out of turn 4, there's a video board across. You can see pit entrance right there. It's not the best spot on the racetrack, but it's a suitable spot. We are looking at moving into either turn 3 or down to turn 1, but not sure that's going to happen for 25 because we have a bigger group going this year, and I need to be able to buy tickets in a whole, area. Whatever. You guys don't need all the background, but that's where we're sitting at. So I went through and looked at the price of the tickets I paid since 2022. Now, I can go back to 2010 as well on that account when I purchased tickets for that race. Back in 2010, it was like $72 a ticket. Okay, not bad at all. So I went back and looked because for the 2025 race, it's $115. Now, not crazy, right? This is the biggest race in the world. It's still cheaper than the Daytona 500. It's still cheaper than F1. It's still a really good value for your ticket, for the money that you're spending. But when I went back and looked, in 2022, I paid $77 for the same ticket, in the same stand, in the same seat. Now, $115. So in 22, it went to 77. 23 went to 82. 24 went from 82 to 105. And now it's up to 115 before service charge as well. So I would assume it's probably going to be about 120 a ticket. So in 4 years, ticket prices have rose there 49%. That is outpacing inflation and outpacing cost of living as well. And now, granted, I know the Indianapolis Motor Speedway's made a lot of improvements to the racetrack. However, when I see other people talk about their tickets and maybe in a more expensive stand and a more expensive price point, their tickets aren't going up 49%. So that part is a little bit confusing to me as well. But hey, I'm willing to pay it. I just know that at some point there's going to be some people that aren't willing to pay it. And I would hate to see regulars get priced out in favor of people that aren't going to be there to really experience the race. Kind of looking at the Formula One crowd in this situation here. But then the most outrageous part to me, whatever, I'll keep paying the ticket price. That's fine. I'll pay the $115 for our tickets. We'll be fine. The parking situation here. So I'm a person that likes to buy a parking pass, right? I like to know that I have a place to park when I get there. And I always buy the parking pass for lot 1C. If it's right, if we're sitting there in turn 4, lot 1C, closest lot to us for the most part, easy to get to, easy to get out of, I'm fine with that. But know that we're parking about, 3/4 of a mile to almost a mile away from the racetrack. At some point, you can't even see the racetrack from where we're parking at. It is an unmowed field with parking attendants that I'm not sure could find their way out of a cul-de-sac. So it's not the best experience in the world, but I know that there's a spot to park there. In 2023, I paid $25 to park there. Totally fine with that. Whatever. Yeah, give me that parking pass. Last year, 2024, $35. Okay, it's still just an unmowed grass lot, but all right, Roger, here's 10 extra bucks. I'll give it to you. 2025, $55 to park in an unmowed grass lot that has gravel roads that probably were laid down before I was even born at this point. 3/4 to a mile away from the racetrack with the same parking attendants that I still don't think could find their way out of a cul-de-sac. So I'm a little confused why there was a 120% increase in parking fees from 2023 to 2025. That part to me is absolutely outrageous. Just to park in a grass field where last year there was a man peeing in the middle of the field while the rain was happening. Yeah, I'm not sure about this, Roger. I might just have to start parking in somebody's front yard and getting out of the racetrack a little bit easier after it. So that's probably the part where I'm just a little bit confused. But hey, how is it this much? Hey, if you want to park in Main Gate down at the south end of the racetrack, and turns 1 and 2 down there, yeah, that's going to set you back $325 on race day. $325. Now, listen, I love my car. I love my Blackwing more than pretty much every car I've ever owned. And would I pay $325 to park it? Potentially. I'm not going to, though. Guess what? We're not taking the Blackwing to the Indy 500. We're taking something else, and we're going to park out in this grass field or in somebody's front yard. But man, $55 to park in a grass field just seems like they're extorting us just a little bit now. Just a teeny tiny bit. But hey, I'll see you all in May at the Indianapolis 500. So let me know in your comments what you think about Kyle Larson going back to Chili Bowl, George Russell and Max Verstappen just straight up not liking each other, and Indy 500 ticket prices. Like and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on TikTok at BreakHard, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at BreakHardBlog.